Welcome to Law of the Land with Lowe Trial Lawyers, Episode 1, Season 1. Most people pick cars based on how they look, how they drive, how the stereo sounds, how many cup holders there are. We don't. We see cars in our business, unfortunately, after something has gone horribly, horribly wrong. And we're going to talk about motor vehicle safety today. Welcome to Law of the Land with Lowe Trial Lawyers. I'm Ryan Fisher, and I'm joined by
Kyle Melling.
And Scott Kuboff.
Between the three of us, we've spent most of our career handling serious injury cases and asking the same question over and over again when it comes to crashworthiness cases, and that is, how did this happen? How did this fail? How could this have been prevented, and how can we prevent it in the future? On this podcast, we break down everyday situations from a legal perspective without all the legalese. So today, like I said, we're going to talk about motor vehicle safety. So let's talk about a short history of motor vehicle safety and where did it originate? Where did it come from? A lot of people my age remember a fellow by the name of Ralph Nader, and Ralph Nader made his career. He wrote a book called Unsafe at Any Speed, which was about the Chevrolet Corvair. Not exactly sure what year that was. I know it was the late 60s. And the Corvair, which, while a sporty little car, tended to roll over on turns and while people were driving. Because of that, there were some motor vehicle safety standards enacted. And then the next kind of big event in the motor vehicle safety world was the infamous Pinto cases, where Ford manufactured the Pinto with the fuel tank right behind the rear assembly, right behind the rear bumper, with virtually no protection. So the Pintos would get hit from behind. The most common accident out there, a day doesn't go by when somebody doesn't call our office with a rear end accident. And the cars would explode and burst into flames, killing the people inside them or horribly injuring them. And then again, the outrage over that vehicle really led to some stronger motor vehicle safety regulations. I'm not going to go through the entire history, but it kind of brings us to motor vehicle safety standards. And where do those standards stand now, Kyle?
Well, surprisingly, not that much has changed. A lot of the safety standards that we have in motor vehicles right now come from the Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standards that are enacted by the National Highway Transportation Authority. And they do so from authorization from Congress. So Congress has said, hey, we don't want to make up the safety rules. We're going to appoint this administrative agency, and we're going to have them make these safety rules for what vehicles should be able to do and how crashworthy vehicles should be. That being said, a lot of those Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standards haven't been updated since the time of the Ford Pinto or shortly thereafter.
Is that, I don't know exactly what the saying is, the wolf guarding the hen house? In our profession, I always thought it was funny that lawyers regulate lawyers. So are you telling me then that the auto industry kind of regulates the auto industry?
Well, you know, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration is supposed to be an independent body that is authorized by Congress. The problem is, where do they get their funding? You know, who contributes to it? Where do they get their information? You know, it's a federal agency. It's not like it has unlimited money. A lot of the funding and a lot of the money comes directly from the auto manufacturers. So the auto manufacturers fund a lot of the tests. The auto manufacturers provide the cars to NHTSA in order to do tests. And the auto manufacturers have, unfortunately, a lot of say and a lot of influence over what Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standards get implemented.
Is it fair to say that all cars sold in the United States meet the federal safety standards?
Yes. It is fair to say that in order to roll off the lot, they all meet the various different Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standards, at least based on the testing that has been done. There have been times where a vehicle has rolled off the lot meeting or presumably meeting the Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standards, and then it's found that it no longer meets that. There are also times where a car can roll off the lot and it's defective and it missed quality control or it missed testing. A great example of that is there is a Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standard that requires backup cameras to be on all new motor vehicles. And there must be a screen in the camera or in the car that shows what's behind you. But many, as a lot of people know, many infotainment systems fail in these cars, and all of a sudden the backup cameras no longer work. That car is now not meeting the Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standards, even though when it rolled off the line, it did.
So if I go into any dealership in the United States, I'm going to get a vehicle that, at least when it rolled off the lot, meets the Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standards. But does that make it safe? Certainly some cars, some motor vehicles, some SUVs are safer than others. How do we, as far as giving advice to our listeners, what metrics do we use to determine what a safe vehicle is?
I would say that the safety standards are not necessarily safety standards, they're sales standards, right? In terms of what can you permissibly sell to folks out there. So yeah, I would say from a standpoint, if you're looking at, finding a safe vehicle, you can go to IIHS. They have safety tests that are done, and you can look at what is, within your budget, what fits the needs of your family, and make a best informed choice of what's out there.
When you say IIHS, you're talking about the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. That is not a government agency or kind of regulated by the government, is it?
Not that I'm aware of. No.
All right.
No.
Because there's two kind of testing standards out there. There's IIHS and there's NHTSA, NHTSA, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. Is there a difference in those? My understanding is there is a difference in the way those two organizations test vehicles.
Right. The IIHS is an independent organization. It's funded by the insurance lobby, or if you will, insurance companies across the country who insure our cars, want to make sure that our cars meet certain safety standards so that they're not paying out massive claims every time that an accident happens. So they run their own safety tests to see, and then they rate vehicles, how good the cars are or not. Vehicles do not have to go through IIHS testing. They do have to go through the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration testing.
Are the IIHS tests that they conduct actually more kind of real world than the tests that NHTSA does?
I would argue that neither of them are really all that good in terms of real world crashing. A great example is the way they test seat backs and whether a seat in your car is robust enough to survive an accident. And instead of testing it in a real world collision, they just put the seat backs on they mount a seat on a piece of metal, and then they connect a rope to the back of it. And then it's called a static pull test. And they just pull up to a certain amount of force. And if the seat survives that pull, then they say this is a safe seat. Comically, back in the early 90s, a group of enterprising lawyers tested a lawn chair from Walmart, and the lawn chair from Walmart passed the Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standards test on seatback safety. And that, unfortunately, that standard, I don't believe, has been updated since. I know there's been a lot of discussion to update it, but I don't think it has been updated. And I know for certain that they haven't changed the test that they use to determine whether that seat's safe or not.
That actually makes me feel better. I have a friend who sells carpet, and he's taken all the seats out of his van. He's got a big, long van. And if he ever needs to transport a passenger, he has a half a dozen lawn chairs that you can set up in the back of the van. So it's good to know that a lawn chair can hold up as you rocket through the front window of the car in an accident. So what we've seen, we get calls constantly. We've all handled crashworthiness cases. Let's talk about what we look at to determine if a car is safe or not. What are the elements that a car or that an SUV possesses that we would be looking for? Very generally speaking, the bigger, the heavier the vehicle is up to a certain point, the safer it's going to be. In a collision between a 3,500-pound vehicle with a 1,500-pound vehicle. You don't need to be a lawyer or a physicist to know you're going to be safer in the 3,500-pound vehicle. But specifically, what sorts of things do we look at in our profession to determine the safety of a vehicle? When I first started in this, something that was very common were rollover accidents. You don't see a whole lot of those anymore. So the stability of a vehicle is one of the elements. We don't see that so much anymore. My understanding is because of the what do you call it? The stability control that virtually most cars have. What are the other kind of defects that we look at as crashworthiness lawyers?
Yeah, I think the good move there is you called it crashworthiness, and what we do is we view everything through the frame of what is crashworthiness. And the easiest definition of crashworthiness is the degree to which a vehicle protects its occupants from the effects of an accident, right? With some exception in the modern vehicles, which we're going to talk about, I'm sure, later, a vehicle doesn't stop an accident from happening. But the vehicle's job is to protect the occupants when they're in an accident, especially an accident of a certain magnitude, i.e. not a huge accident, but your run-of-the-mill rear enders, or accidents that we unfortunately see every day. What we look at is, do we have an injury that shouldn't have occurred? Do we have a rear end accident at 35 miles an hour, but we have an occupant who has a severed neck? Right? A 35 mile an hour rear end accident, that person should be walking away with some whiplash. And instead, we'll see sometimes they have a spinal fracture.
When you say a severed neck, we're not talking about somebody being decapitated.
No.
We're talking about an injury to a spinal cord, correct?
Right.
Okay.
An injury to the neck portion of the spinal cord, which could suggest that, like I said before about the seat backs, it could suggest that the seat back failed, meaning the seat back failed to hold the person in the car when it got rear-ended, and then they ramped up and hit their head on either the back seat or the ceiling. So we look for strange injuries. Disproportionate injuries. Other things you look for is intrusion into the occupant space. All right, the inside of your car, that's called the occupant space. You're surrounded by a frame and a bunch of metal and a bunch of glass, and you're strapped into a seat. If something intrudes into that space, that's not supposed to happen. And then you have your run-of-the-mill fires. Cars shouldn't catch on fire, and they should definitely not burn from fuel. There should not be a post-collision fuel-fed fire. Other things that are in your car can catch on fire, but those liquids are in your vehicle in such a small quantity that they shouldn't burn you alive. The only liquid that's in your car that could really cause a huge fire is the fuel. And we expect auto manufacturers to protect the fuel cells to prevent them from catching on fire. And then, like you mentioned before, rollovers and things of that nature.
Back in the day, and as I get older, I find myself prefacing statements with back in the day. But back in the day, and I'm talking about the 70s and maybe some into the 80s, it was not uncommon to see a car fire or a car on fire on the side of the road. I don't want to say a day wouldn't go by, but probably a week wouldn't go by when you'd see a car fire, when you wouldn't see a car fire. And now they are very, very few and far between. My lawyer-hating friends that like to call me an ambulance chaser and things like that, I like to cite events like that and tell them the reason cars don't catch on fire anymore when they're in a minor collision is because of me and my brethren and the people who have come before me for filing lawsuits and making these cars much safer than they were 20, 30, 40 years ago. So while we have seen a few fuel-fed fires recently, those are unusual events. And if you're involved in an accident or you know somebody who was and the car caught on fire, that should never happen. What about like the safety mechanisms that are in all cars? There was a time when there were no seatbelts, or basically the seatbelts were useless. Cars have pretty good seatbelts now. What is everyone? We're always told, buckle up, buckle up. What is the importance of wearing a seatbelt in a vehicle? Has that become obsolete because we have airbags and things like that?
You want to take this one, Scott?
Are you asking if seatbelts have become obsolete?
No, well,
they keep you inside of the vehicle. The vehicles are designed in such a way with the safety mechanisms and the airbags that they're effective when you're seated in the seat where you're supposed to be, not flying through the air and through the windshield or the back of the vehicle. Yes, seatbelts save lives every single day. We know this. There has been countless studies on them, and it's something that certainly, if you're in a vehicle, and I remember when I was a kid, we wouldn't wear seatbelts, and it wasn't a thing. And I have vivid memories of driving in a orange Ford Pinto as like probably a 3 or 4 year old, standing on the front seat of the the front passenger car, so I could look over the dashboard as we were going to my grandma's. And anytime we hit the brakes, the old arm went out.
Your parents didn't like you very much, did they? Like a Ford Pinto wasn't enough. They let you stand up.
And the other vehicle that was in our driveway at that time was a red Chevy Nova. So I was able to survive the 80s. But yeah, seatbelts are mandatory part of things that we look at. Obviously, airbags, side curtain airbags, advanced collision warning, ABS, lane keep assist. All of these things help us to keep the cars between the ditches and hopefully avoiding each other on the roadway.
So when we're evaluating a case, call comes in, somebody's horribly injured or a loved one has been killed in a motor vehicle accident, and maybe they're saying, hey, the airbag didn't deploy, or the vehicle rolled over, or the prospective client may think the car did not behave the way it was supposed to behave in the accident. The first thing that we generally look at is, and that was kind of a rhetorical question, of course we should wear our seatbelt.
Sometimes
But the first thing we look at is, did the victim avail him or herself of what safety mechanisms were available, i.e., were they wearing a seatbelt? It's real hard to blame the manufacturer for an airbag defect or something if the operator or the passenger didn't take advantage of what safety mechanisms were there, like the seatbelt. Yeah. That is 99 out of 100 times in a crashworthiness case. If a person's not wearing the seatbelt, we don't take the case. Some statistics that I've looked at, and this was kind of reassuring to me, but 92%, based on a study that I read, of front seat occupants nowadays do wear their seatbelt regularly. And interestingly, in fatal crashes, half of the people who were killed, almost exactly half, 52% to be exact, are unbelted at the time of the accident. So while only 8 or 10% are unbelted on the roads, half of the deaths are unbelted people. So you've got don't every so often I hear someone say, I don't wear a seatbelt because if my car catches on fire, I want to be able to get out of it. First off, I said cars very rarely catch on fire nowadays. But you are always safer in the vehicle than out of the vehicle. And what those belts do, not only do they keep you in the vehicle, they keep you where you're supposed to be inside the vehicle. So when those airbags deploy, they work. If the airbag deploys into the driver's occupant area and you're in the back seat or you're leaned over into the middle of the front seat there, that airbag isn't going to help you. So if you take nothing else away from this, wear your seatbelt when you're in a vehicle. Front seat, back seat, it doesn't matter. Especially if you're in a vehicle with me, because I get criticized the way I drive sometimes.
You know, Ryan, this brings up an interesting point that you brought up before, and that is, every car rolls off the line meeting all the federal motor vehicle safety standards. So how can we say that a car that meets all the federal standards is not safe? Seatbelts is a great example of this. The FMVSS was required seatbelts in all vehicles starting in 1968, believe it or not. But they did not require 3-point seatbelts in the back seats until like the early 90s, and they did not require a 3-point seat belt, which is the shoulder belt and the lap belt, in the middle back seat, the back seat that's not on either side, but the back seat that's in the middle, until 2004. This is despite the fact that auto manufacturers have been putting 3-point seat belts in the center back seats since as early as 1986, meaning it's been technically feasible. Everyone knew that it was safer to have a 3-point seat belt, and yet the Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standards didn't update until 2004 to require a 3-point center seatbelt in the back.
The Federal Motor Vehicle Standards are archaic. They are based on kind of not real world experience. They are old and they are antiquated. For instance, front crash avoidance systems. So virtually every car sold out there now, close to 90%, have some sort of front crash avoidance system built in. If you get too close to the car in front of you or you're not paying attention, it will beep. You've got things that keep you in your lanes so you don't, if you're not paying attention, don't veer out of your lane. And many cars, including mine, will automatically stop you if you're getting too close to the car in front of you. That technology has been around since, 2008?
Well, in consumer vehicles, I mean, Mercedes-Benz was putting that on cars in the late 80s. BMW started putting it on cars in the mid-90s. It didn't become normal in consumer vehicles until around the 2000s when it first came out. It was rejected summarily by consumers. But yes, we've had this technology for a lot longer than it's been getting placed on cars. And the Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standards still don't require that technology to be on cars until 2029, I believe.
That is astounding.
And even when they are on them, they don't always work, right? You know this personally.
Certainly.
You were just at the, and this is not front collision warning, but you were just at the car dealership, were you not? His car?
That pole was invisible.
The
Tesla pole was invisible.
Has what? 20, Kyle, how many cameras around
it
the
has
car?
7 cameras. That's actually a criticism.
Okay, 7 cameras, only 7 cameras, and it did not see the pole that you backed into.
There is no substitute for being a careful, attentive driver.
And here's another. In terms of like rear backing up cameras, mine is completely iced up right now. We were just skiing over the weekend. And we were actually in the car, and my wife was backing up, and she could not back up the vehicle because she couldn't see in the camera. And I'm like, that's what the mirrors are for. And it's just one of those things where we've become so kind of dependent on technology that sometimes I question whether just common driving skills and common sense have gone out the window with some folks.
I've met your wife. I recall that she has a neck. And it allows her head to pivot,
well,
so you can look behind you if you had to.
You would think so.
I'll remind her of that when I see her.
Oh, please do.
All right. So let's just real quick go through a couple things that we look at, and then let's talk about the cars that are on the road. We can do a little bit of advertising here with regard to crash-worthy cases and what we look at. Like I said, first we look at, is the injury significant? These cases are incredibly expensive to pursue, well into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. The last one I think that we handled, we were well into the $400,000, $500,000 range, and that's not unusual. It's not unusual to go higher than that. So in order to justify Lowe Trial Lawyers spending that kind of money, the victim has to be really, really badly injured, catastrophically injured. And then we have to certainly look at the kind of the dynamics of the accident. Was this a survivable crash? Are the injuries proportionate? Did the car behave the way it was supposed to? And one of the big issues is, was it a survivable crash? I don't care how good your airbag is, how good your seatbelt is. If you get into an accident, if you're stopped and you get hit by a semi-tractor from behind going 75 miles an hour, that probably isn't a survivable accident.
Yeah, it's the auto manufacturer's favorite defense We refer to it as the hell of a wreck defense. You can't design a car that can survive any and all accidents. But at the same time, every auto manufacturer knows more than general consumers and even more than us lawyers what kinds of accidents cars do get into every day. And they can be designing cars that can do better in these accidents that are common and that should be survivable. But yes, you're absolutely right. You drive a car off a cliff, unless it's a Volvo, you're probably not going to survive. I only say that because Volvo used to test their cars by driving them off cliffs.
You drive a Volvo, don't you?
Well, I do.
Why don't we? I know where a cliff is.
Congratulations on all of your success.
Let's reenact that. So just the various types of malfunctions that we see. Failure to deploy an airbag. Clients sometimes think no matter what kind of accident I'm in, my airbag should deploy. That isn't true.
Correct.
There's sensors positioned in the vehicle, depending on the kind of the angle of the impact between the two vehicles. Sometimes they're supposed to deploy, sometimes they're not. A key clue is if some deploy and some don't. That should never happen. Either all your airbags deploy or none of them deploy. Is that right?
Well, yes and no. The airbags generally, this is very generally speaking, but generally there are 3 stages to airbags. Stage 1 is slightly more than your parking lot fender bender, right? It's a frontal impact. It's at a certain speed, but it's not what the car considers to be a high velocity speed or a high speed impact. And so it deploys your airbag quickly. You know, we're talking milliseconds here, but not quite as violently as if you hit somebody at 68 miles an hour. That's your second stage deployment, which is going to be a much faster deployment of that airbag. If it were to hit you while you were just sitting there, it would really, really hurt. It might break your nose. It might break your glasses, but it's going to stop you from, obtaining a serious injury to your front, or hopefully it'll stop you from obtaining serious injury to the front of your body. And then separately, there are side airbags. And the side airbags are commanded to deploy in different types of impacts. So your side airbags are not generally going to go off in your frontal accidents. Your side airbags are generally only going to go off in an impact that moves you laterally or left to right. So if somebody T-bones you, or if your car spins, or if your car rolls over, those are all the things that'll trigger your side airbags from going off. I think what you were referencing is maybe if the passenger side airbag goes off and the driver's side airbag doesn't go off, that would be a huge red flag, because the passenger airbag's never going to go off without the driver's airbag going off. That said, cars are designed to not have the passenger airbag go off unless they detect an occupant of a certain weight sitting in the passenger seat. This is to protect children that may be sitting in the front seat of a car that are not large enough to absorb that impact from that airbag.
So you can tell me the statement that I made was completely wrong. But it reminds me of a case that we had a couple years ago where the woman that was driving got into almost a direct head-on collision. The oncoming vehicle went left of center. It was almost an exact head-on collision. It was maybe 10 degrees offset, and the passenger side airbag deployed. The driver's side airbag did not deploy, and she was horribly injured. And that the manufacturer of that vehicle ultimately wrote a big check to compensate our client. So we have deployment, but kind of opening up the time frame. There's another cause of action that we've had some success with, and that is failure to equip. Not that the airbag didn't deploy, but that you didn't equip the vehicle with the airbag. We are seeing less and less of those as the manufacturers are equipping these cars, nearly all of the cars with airbags. But like Kyle said, that technology has been around. Well, no, you were talking about the anti-lock brakes, but the as part of the automatic braking system, or hand in hand with the automatic braking system, the airbags came into favor with the manufacturers. And there are instances where the vehicle it's older, but it's not that old. In that particular case, it was a 2019 vehicle. The majority of vehicles made in 2019 had airbags. Many of this manufacturer's trim models had airbags. In this particular model, it was not an option, and it would have prevented obviously the injuries that the victim sustained. We talked about rollovers. You talked about seat backs. There's another one that we're seeing a lot of, and that is the vehicles that aren't staying in park.
Yes.
What are those cases about?
We call those park to reverse defects. And that is a vehicle that has an unintended movement without somebody putting their foot on the brake and changing the gear. So the vehicle's in park, and then all of a sudden it rolls backwards or it rolls forward, and there's no one in the driver's seat, or the driver in the driver's seat didn't intend for that vehicle to move forward and backwards.
And in those cases, our client, the operator of the vehicle, usually gets run over by their own vehicle, which you think that's a 1 in a million. It isn't. It happens more often than you would think. And the cause of action there usually rests on some sort of defect in the mechanism that either keeps the car in park or allows the operator to shift from park into drive or reverse. So we've established that if you go into a dealership and you walk out with a new car or drive out with a new car, it's going to meet the safety standards. That doesn't mean it's safe. That doesn't mean it's as safe as every other car out there. Scott, I know you sold your 1969 Plymouth recently, and you bought a new car for your wife and for your 2 kids. What are you driving and why?
Yeah, it was a 1979 Grand Marquis. Called it the Tank. Safest vehicle out there. No, I'm actually on my 3rd Kia Sorento. And it's something that we've been happy with. It fits our family. It fits the needs. It has good safety standards in terms of IHS and 5-star with NHTSA. We have airbags, advanced collision warning, although we're finding out that it doesn't work that well in inclement weather, which can be an issue, but that's okay. It just means that I need to actually do my job and pay attention while I'm driving. But it has lane keep assist, has really good ratings, and for our family, for our budget, for our needs, it fits the bill. Very happy with it, and I know there's safer cars out there, but at the end of the day, I've always thought it's not necessarily the vehicle per se, but it's the person behind the wheel of that vehicle that makes things a lot more dangerous.
Kyle, before I ask you that same question, something came to me while Scott was talking. All of these electronic safety mechanisms, the automatic emergency braking, the lane keep technology, that can all be deactivated by the driver. I don't know why it can be. Oftentimes, if you do deactivate it, it defaults to being on the next time you start the vehicle. I would urge you to get used to the technology. Your car is safer with all of that technology working rather than it being disengaged. The complaint that we hear a lot is the car kind of will sometimes ghost stop or ghost slow down. In my vehicle on a nice sunny day, sometimes I'll go under a bridge and the road color changes. My car thinks it's a vehicle and it doesn't slam the brakes on, but it will slow down. It is an inconvenience, but I know that my car is much safer with that technology working. I don't know why they even let you disable it.
It's also because you drive a Tesla. I mean, that's why your car does that.
Well, I think there's probably some truth to that, and I'll talk about my car in a minute. Now that you got your license back, Kyle, what are you driving?
Was a long road to get that license back, but well, I drive a Volvo, specifically the Volvo XC90. I've always wanted one for one. That's one of the reasons I drive the Volvo. Number 2 is I really admire Volvo as a company for formally testing all of their vehicles by driving them off cliffs. I thought that was practical, a really cool. Yeah, well, they drove them off cliffs until the crash test dummy said that it would have survived the drive off the cliff. They don't drive them off cliffs anymore. Now they drop them from 300-foot cranes, and they actually bring first responders in after they've dropped them multiple times from the cranes and teach the first responders how to get into the wrecked vehicles because the steel on those cars is so strong. You got to know where to cut in order to open them up. But the real reason I drive the Volvo is because I thought it was cool. I like the simplicity of the Swiss engineering on the inside of it, and it's very quiet and comfortable.
So, Kyle, I have a question here.
Yeah.
If they need to specifically train first responders where to cut to extract people out, does that make the vehicle more dangerous in that situation?
In that situation, yeah, it does. That's absolutely a trade-off that company has decided to make it harder for the jaws of life to break into the car. That's something to be concerned about. You want me to be critical of my car? I will. The front offset crash rating on the Volvo XC90 plug-in electric hybrid, which is the version that I have, is actually not 5-star rated. It's only 4-star rated. And one of the reasons for that is because of the way the electric engine, the electric motor, and the battery in the front of the car is positioned. It doesn't get as high of frontal offset crash ratings as it used to. But, everything's a trade-off. There's no car on the road that's safe, except maybe a Rolls-Royce Phantom because they weigh 10,000 pounds. And even that, you could drive that off a cliff and you can die. My other fun story about the Volvo is it came out in 2006 or 2007. And until recently, no one had ever died in one in the UK. So now, you can't say that here in America. We kill ourselves in our cars, every day. Doesn't matter what you're driving. But the first person to die in one in the UK was actually crushed by a truck that rolled over onto the Volvo. There's been very little to no documented evidence of people crashing them and dying over in England. Again, here in America, we're idiots.
Maybe it's safer to drive on the left. I am on my second Tesla, a controversial, probably the most controversial car on the road, although I just have the Model 3. I do not have the Cybertruck. I love it. I really do. My funny story just involves a woman in a grocery store parking lot several months ago when there was all the controversy with Elon Musk. I was driving and it was drizzling out, and I stopped to let her cross in front of me. And I was with my 92-year-old mother was sitting next to me, and this woman crossed in front and got right in front of my car. She wasn't more than 2 feet from the front bumper, and she looks me right in the eye and flips me double birds. This was in...
Are you sure it was because of your Tesla, or was it just your reputation?
This was in Solon, Ohio. It was just some woman. My mother looks at me. She goes, "Do you know that woman?" And it was. It's funny because the people on the left were really all gung ho about electric cars, and then Elon Musk allied up with Trump, and then people on the left went crazy. And anybody who drove a Tesla was like enemy number one. So that's kind of my funny Tesla story. But I love it. The car updates itself almost weekly, so the software gets updated. I get in my car one morning and I have new options. My car can do things that it wasn't able to do. It's got all sorts of toys and things. My car, I think, is safer because all the seats have whoopee cushions in them. I kid you not. There is a setting on my car that can make the passenger seats and the driver's seats make a flatulent noise when you turn or when somebody sits down. But seriously, it has every electronic safety mechanism on it. Our operator, Alexa, can't seem to accept this.
Including...
She's losing control because I'm talking about flatulence.
It also has the ability to play beach buggy on your computer dashboard, right?
You can play video games on it, but
that seems safe.
But seriously, it has the safety features that it has on it, including the full self-driving. I think are great. The danger is you cannot rely on that full self-driving. It's really good. It's 99% good, but it only takes 1%. So the car tells you to keep paying attention to the road, even though it's driving itself. And I have experienced firsthand, the cars make mistakes. They don't make them often, and you can get lulled into a false sense of security, but they do make mistakes. So there is no, like we've all said, there is no perfectly safe vehicle out there. Anything else on that topic?
But that's one thing that I think makes Teslas perhaps dangerous, is that like the marketing that goes behind it, in the fact that people buy into it and think that it's a self-driving car, that it's like uber safe, and then they over rely on that technology, and they get hurt, and they hurt other people really, really badly.
That's a great point. I think, like I said, it isn't perfect, and people need to recognize that. The owner of the company tends to get ahead of himself a little bit and brag about how those cars are perfect and infallible. And anyone who owns one will tell you they're really good, but they are far from perfect.
There's a couple great articles. There's a couple great websites that track all the lies that Elon tells about how good a Tesla is at self-driving. And I'm glad to hear you acknowledge that your car cannot drive itself. It is my position that Teslas are some of the safest cars on the road. Electric cars in general are some of the safest cars on the road, in part because they don't have giant iron blocks in the front of them. So they have really big crumple zones. They are really good at absorbing the energy from car accidents. And Tesla, in particular, of all of the electronic car manufacturers, has done a really good job protecting its battery, which is extremely and highly flammable. Some of the other car manufacturers have not done a good job protecting their batteries, but Tesla's done a nice job there. Where Tesla's just totally failed is in telling everyone that it's full self-driving, which is what the feature is called, or autopilot, which is what the feature is called. And then people are like, oh, what do you mean it doesn't drive itself? But it doesn't.
And don't they charge you extra for that feature as
You
well?
can buy it. You can pay a one-time charge when you buy the car, and I don't recall how much it is. I just don't remember what it is. I personally have a subscription to it, and it's about $100 a month. All right. So, like I said, we do crashworthiness cases. They're not as common as your everyday motor vehicle cases, slip and fall cases, dog bite cases. That's kind of our bread and butter. We've handled thousands of those cases. But we get calls every day from folks who just want some advice, and that's great. I think if when in doubt, call us, call a personal injury lawyer. It doesn't cost anything to talk to us. But we do get some crazy stories, and maybe that's an idea for a future podcast, is to just talk about some of the crazy stories that we got. So we've talked about what kind of cars we put our families in. We've talked about the safest or safer cars on the road. That begs the question, what are the worst cars or the most dangerous? Realizing that you're not going to drive any car off the new car lot and it's going to blow up. That's not going to happen. But when involved in a wreck, what are the cars that perform, or the SUVs that perform the worst out there?
Kyle, you want to take this?
Sure. The Mitsubishi Mirage.
Period. That's it.
It is the car that has the most deaths per million people in America, like 4 or 5 years in a row. No, I would tell you that honestly, the most dangerous car on the road is the smallest, especially because of the high volume of people that are driving, half-ton and 3/4-ton pickup trucks to take their kids to school every day. You in a Honda Fit versus a Ford F-150, the Honda Fit's going to lose every single day. Comically, the 2008 Smart Car had one of the best occupant protection compartments that you could find. There's a great video from IIHS of that car smashing into a wall at 35 miles an hour, and the occupant compartment stayed totally intact. The problem is there was no crumple zone, so the dummy on the inside died of blunt force trauma from the seatbelts and the steering wheel and the airbag. But size and weight are really, really, one of the features that makes cars safe and not. But my favorite answer to this question is the Jeep Wrangler. That is the most unsafe car on the road. It doesn't have doors. They've been exempt from multiple federal motor vehicle safety standards for years, including side impact protection. They didn't put side airbags on them until recently. They roll over. They eject their passengers. But it also doesn't change the fact that since I was 16 years old, I've wanted one, and I still want one.
They're really cool. I did see a video recently where it was evaluating the aerodynamics of a Jeep compared to a moo cow. and the cattle was more aerodynamic than that really cool lifted box with no doors. I'm going to go a different direction.
Let me stop you. A moo cow?
Yeah,
is that what you call them?
Yeah, where you get the milk from.
Oh,
Yeah.
are those similar to cows?
Same things. Just they go moo. Okay, so I'm going to go a little different direction. It's not necessarily a type of car, although, Kyle, I will agree with your assessment as it relates to the Mirage. I famously drove a 1997 Ford Purple Aspire all through college, and I can tell you that the roof structure of that was terribly weak. We tested it once at a party, and there was some people surfing on top of it. But I'm going to go a different direction. So I'm going to go with those big giant ass trucks that we see on the road that have these trailers and that Clark Griswold can drive underneath, right? Trailers that do not have side guardrails are the most dangerous vehicles out there because they effectively operate as a guillotine. And, NHTSA has done some studies on this, and I just got some statistics from 2008 to 2017. There was approximately 212 passenger vehicle occupant deaths per year involving trucks that did not have side guardrails. And the reason why is those trucks are really high up and you're driving in, and effectively the side of the truck is right at head level, and there's a lot of occupant intrusion from what is called underride. And they did a study that showed that systems like the Angel Wing prevent underride deaths for crashes at about 35 to 40 miles an hour, effectively eliminating 97% of fatal injuries. So it's something that there's technology out there that can make these vehicles safer. The problem, right, is that NHTSA and the people that are funding the politicians place profit over people. And the benefit to installing this system, they affect a safety benefit of about $640 to $50 per trailer. It would save, many fatalities per year. But the cost, the lifetime cost of putting these devices on there is close to about $4,000. So it costs more to equip these trailers with these devices than it does just paying the families of dead people. And it is an absolute travesty that is how we evaluate safety. So I'm going to go with not necessarily a type of car, but more of a class of roadway vehicles that I just think are incredibly dangerous.
I think that's a whole topic for another podcast.
We could do that.
Kyle raised a point as far as the least safe vehicles, and I'm not going to answer that directly. A couple months ago, my wife got a brand new Ford Bronco Heritage Edition, so it's designed to look like the Bronco from the 70s, minus O.J. Simpson. But the doors come off. That is an option. I have not taken them off. My wife said, let's take the doors off. She got it right at the end of the summer. Please, 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 if you have a vehicle that you can take the doors off of, resist the temptation. A large percentage of the accidents we see are T-bone accidents. The weakest part of the car is the side of the car, but having a door makes a big difference. If you are driving without doors and you are unlucky enough to get T-boned, you are in a world of trouble. So if you're going to take your doors off, do it off-road. It's stunning to me, truthfully, that's an option. That's that her car has that ability.
You could still get really hurt if you take your doors off.
Yeah, you know what's
If you're just
wild?
looking to get hurt, you can get hurt with the doors.
You know,
off.
your Ford Bronco came with side impact airbags. The Ford Bronco putting the side impact airbags on a car that could take the doors off is the reason that Jeep started putting side impact airbags on the car. Prior to the Ford Bronco, Jeep said, "Oh, we can't do it." Well, then magically the Ford can do it, so now Jeep can do it. Right.
But one of our favorite game shows to play is Can You Sue? So I don't need to explain it to you. Let's roll the tape, and I think you'll catch on right away. All right. So let's pretend that after this guy gets his cranium reattached, that he calls our office and says, "I was hurt, horribly injured in a ATV accident, and I have a video. Let me send it to you. Tell me if you think I have a case." And this is the video. So how would we go about analyzing whether we could help this likely brain damaged person now? First off, where in the world is this? So
Looks like Cabrini Green in Chicago.
I think this is not in the United States.
No.
But that architecture is just breathtaking. those apartments or condos or prison blocks, whatever those are just beautiful. So we have handled defective ATV cases. This would not be one.
No.
I mean, that's a kid's toy.
Yeah,
Right.
it looks like a child's toy that he's riding, or a child's ATV.
At least a mini ATV. Well, let's talk about the bad, right? First of all, the ATV is too small for him. Second of all, he's not wearing a helmet.
All gas, no brakes.
Third of all, he's all gas, no brakes. Clearly, he's not experienced with driving that, nor does he appear to know what it is.
I mean, he
he's
looks
doing.
like he's having fun, though. I mean, that's really all that matters, right?
Definitely.
Goes up on two wheels, clearly out of control. Why is that dumpster in the middle of the road?
Now we're finding something that I could be critical of. That is an obstruction in a roadway. Can I find somebody that was responsible for putting that dumpster there and sue them for it?
That might be the best cause of action. It's still a loser,
Yeah.
but that dumpster is definitely in the traveled portion of the roadway. But this is broad daylight. Like if this
Yeah, it's
happened at
pretty
night,
visible.
if a motorist driving along at night crashed into that, it would be an entirely different scenario. And that, in fact, might be something that we could handle. But that is a hazard that was, to coin a phrase, open and obvious. And he just drove into it
I think so.
out of
Yeah.
control.
Yeah, if this gentleman called me, I think I would tell him that his search must continue.
What do you think, Scott?
Definitely not a case. And obviously, we don't know what country it is, but there's, he's on an ATV, a kid's ATV. He's at an intersection. It doesn't appear that there's any stop signs or any traffic control devices on it, but he just straight up sent it and sent it right into that dumpster that you could see if you used your neck and eyeballs. And I don't see this as a case.
All right. I would agree with you. I would tell Mr. Knievel that he should call one of our competitors, and maybe they would take this case. So can he sue? No.
Well, he can,
But he
just
would
not
lose.
not good. Not a good
Okay.
case.
And that wraps up our first episode of Can You Sue? And that brings us to a close of our first podcast here at the studios of Lowe Trial Lawyers. A couple takeaways from today. This is not as easy as the professional podcasters make it sound on the radio. But seriously, the car you drive does matter, especially when something goes wrong. So hopefully this gives you something different maybe to think about when you go into the dealership. Do your research. Read the NHTSA report, read the IIHS report. So you go in and you're a little bit educated, because they're going to want to sell you the car because it's a beautiful color or it's got really cool wheels. Those aren't decisions that are going to save your life or your family's life. So be smart out there.
And where can they find us?
They can find us. We are a personal injury law firm in Cleveland. We have offices in Youngstown, Lorraine, and Chardon. Our main office is in Mayfield Heights. We represent injured folks all over Ohio and surrounding states. You can find us online at lowfightwin.com. You can call us at 216-781-2600. If you think that you might have a case, you can always talk to one of us for free, no obligation. And if we can help you, we'll tell you. And if we can't, like this guy on the ATV, we'll tell you that also. Sometimes we can't help you, but we can give you some good free advice as well. So thank you for watching and listening, and tune in to episode 2. Thank you.